I missed you walking in, buddy. Everybody wants to say hello, and Gem's just hanging out in the corner. Say hello. Oh, you're sweet. Oh, you're so sweet. Are you here to talk about books with me? Hello, bookish besties, and welcome back. Or if you're new here, welcome. My name's Leesh, and here we go over all things Kindle Unlimited, popular fiction, basically any book that I feel like reading, from thriller to romance and fantasy and all things in between. This is Rufus. He's my reading buddy, and if you hear the purring, it's because he is getting pet. So if you hear him, he's just going to chill out with me today as we go over all the books that I read in February. I'm so excited to bring this video to you because it's actually my best reading month. So let's just get straight into the books. What do you reckon, Rufus? You reckon you want to hang out here, or do you want to sit on the books? What do you reckon? I started off with The Wicked King, which was one of my most anticipated follow-ups. I'm not a series reader, and honestly, if I start a series, it takes me a while to get onto the second book. But because I loved The Cruel Prince so much, I just couldn't wait to continue on with Cardan and Jude's story. This book, however, it took a while to get back into. We saw shifts in political power, we saw a change in their dynamic of their relationship, and we had a look at new contenders or new courts and their influence in this political relationship. For me, it just felt really slow in the beginning, and then it kind of picked up towards the end. So the ending for me really was the redemption of this book. There was probably a good 55% of the way where I was just falling asleep during the read and really wondering why is it that I'm actually reading this book again? Because I can't get into this. I was reading it for a bit of the romance, and I was just waiting for these two characters to really, I don't know, just do something, and nothing happened until the end. So for me, this was a bit of a miss. I still gave it 3.75 stars, I believe. Obviously, if you read The Cruel Prince and you loved it as much as I did, and you just have to continue on the series, I do believe you just need to pick up The Wicked King. Yes. I'm just going to do a little magic trick. Ready? Okay, so let's continue with the book, shall we? Next up, I read, it's a physical book. I'm glad my mum died, like everybody else in the history of the world, to read this book. I think even people who aren't on BookTube had read this book before me. I really found myself captivated by this, and I binge read it. It was a buddy read with Julia and her friend Alyssa. And so in this book, I found that the beginning of her story, her childhood, was really well developed. Like she'd done a lot of work on who she was as a child and what her childhood was. And then as we head towards the end of the book, when there's still a lot of traumatic events happening in her life and she's really trying to overcome it, that she just scratches the surface of what you want to know. So for me, I found that it's a great book of healing. It's a great book of self-awareness. I just felt that so many questions remained unanswered, particularly around her father relationship and her eating disorder and the work that she does now. So I felt like it was all a big focus on the past and her relationship with her mother and how she healed that, which was incredible, but there were so many scars that were left that were untouched in this book. I applaud her vulnerability, and I don't rate nonfiction. Obviously, I don't feel it's fair for any memoir to be rated, so I didn't rate this one. I want more. Is that possible? Can we get a sequel? I want to know how you're going, girl. I just want to give you a big hug. If you're interested in memoirs, this one, and being in my generation where you grew up around iCarly or Nickelodeon, this is a good book to read. Next up, I read another book on my Kindle Unlimited subscription. Not this one, this is the one that I just finished. Spoiler, March reads. Next up, I read Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young, and I have spoken about this book in 2 previous videos. This for me was a 4.75 stars, almost 5 stars. I rate it 5 stars on everywhere, but when we rate it here. So in Next of Kin, we follow Chloe and Warren. It is a story of 2 people who are pushed into forced proximity by CPS as they have a new scheme with their foster guardianship program. So basically, Warren needs help with a place to live that's close by his brother's school, and Chloe needs some financial assistance or financial stability, and that is provided to by Warren. It is an incredible story that I never thought that I would expect in a cover so cute. It was touching on family drama. It was roommates to kind of like rivals. They weren't really rivals, but Warren was making it very clear that he wasn't her friend. And then they became friends, and then they became lovers. There's ASL used because his brother's deaf, and you just, it's just wholesome, and there's no miscommunication. There's no weird third act breakup. Obviously there's drama, but you have to read it yourself. No spoilers here. Must read. If you haven't heard about this book, go get it now. 4.75. It's almost a drop everything book and put it on your radar. Oh my gosh. So next up we have my only 5-star read for the month, and drumroll please. Yes, it was February, the love month, and The Do-Over by Lynn Painter hit all the marks for me. I read this in literally a day, and now I'm a mum, I have a 10-month-old, but I binge read this baby as soon as she was down for a nap and when she was in bed at night. This was so stunning. I literally read it 2 days before Valentine's Day, and I'm not big on the commercial holiday, but this book, Lynn Painter, there's something that she puts into her writing that just gets me every time. So basically in this book, we follow Emily and we follow her not so perfect, but what she deemed a perfect relationship with Josh, which isn't spoiler, it's on the back. And then also how she finds Nick. We basically go over a Groundhog Day style story, which I thought would get really boring. However, she just does it justice. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm reading Groundhog Day apart from the obvious. I actually really struggle with Groundhog Day style movies, but with this one, I don't know, there was just something in here that I was just excited for. Her female characters tend to be quite, I guess, difficult to read, and I think it's just something to do with teenage girls. They're really quite, I mean, I was one. They're difficult, and when you read them, they're difficult. I think with the growth and the development and the love interest and just how this one all pans out in the end and how she corrects her life, I really vibed this book. And so I gave it 5 stars, and also a massive shout out because this was my first ever publisher book that was gifted to me by Simon & Schulze. So thank you so much for sending me a copy of this book. I cannot stop raving about it. Honestly, it is my favorite book of the year so far. So next up, another book on my Kindle Unlimited, which you've heard about on at least 2 other videos by now, and that's The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This is a very popular book. You see it all over BookTube, you see it all over BookTok and Bookstagram, like everywhere, everyone's talking about it. My sister loved it. I gave it a 3.75 stars. I found that it was quite predictable in the end, with a little bit of a twist, but nothing that you didn't see coming. So in the story, you're basically following Lily is looking for a job. She's been out of prison for 5 years. She's finding it really hard to stay down in a work situation. She's living out of her car, and then out of nowhere, Nina Winchester is looking for a housemaid to basically keep her house clean and tidy. She also has a young daughter who needs to be babysat as well. And you go over this dynamic of their relationship and their house in turmoil. Obviously things happen, you have to read the book. It's creepy. You just have to read it to find out. So for me, it was a 3.75 just because of the predictability of the plot twist. And I don't know, I feel like I'd read the book before. So I don't know who wrote it first, but it was definitely something that I felt like I'd read before in other books. So didn't win any points for originality. But yeah, that's from me. So next up, I can't believe I did it. I've finally done it, guys. Let's have a round of applause. Leesh read A Court of Thorn and Roses, and it was the first ever book that I have annotated. No rhyme or reason behind these tabs apart from things that made me feel something, question something, or want answers to, or got an answer for. I don't know if that's the right way to annotate, but at the end of the day, I really enjoyed this story. I think everybody and their dog has read this book, and I was not one of them. So I decided to take everyone on my Bookstagram along on the journey with me that wanted to be on my close friends list. And we went chapter by chapter, and everybody who commented said that it felt like they were reading it again for the first time. I've somehow avoided all the spoilers online on BookTok, on Bookstagram, on BookTube. I just exit out of anything that mentions ACOTAR. It's hard with reels. I've almost almost avoided all the spoilers on the reels, but names kind of get thrown around a lot. And so I feel like I was expecting a certain name to pop up in this book, and it did. So in this book, we are following Faya and her story with her family and just being in ruins and hungry and going out into the wild, I guess, and then hunting. She kills a wolf, and then it's life for a life, basically. This book is supposed to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it is really loose. Like I'm saying it's a really loose Beauty and the Beast retelling. I read this as a buddy read with Julia. Again, I feel like we both agree that this is a book of duality. Like you feel like you're reading two different books. Like at the start, you have this different character in Faya, and then when you reach the end, she's a totally different character. But I really enjoyed the ride. I think this is one of the books that in my life, I will never get to read again for the first time. And when you get all like the juicy details of what happened or what's happening, you just read it and you need to take a break because you're like, wow, I just can't believe I just read all of that. So I feel like I'm getting into my fantasy era. This is definitely the most fantasy that I've read at the beginning of a year ever. And I loved it. I can't wait to pick up the next one. I think this one wasn't as strong as I would like it to have been, just based off the changing, twisting feeling of the character and not feeling like she was a strong character. But I gave it 3.5. Okay, so the next book I read was on my Kindle, and it was a bit of a wild card. I just picked it up out of no rhyme or reason, apart from a friend of mine saying that it was their January favorite read. Beulah Reads gave me this recommendation, and that's actually a book from another Instagrammer that is named Bonnie Kent, and it's her book, So Damn Sketchy. It's somewhat of a memoir. This story basically takes you through her childhood, her upbringing, the first 20 years of her life to her 21st birthday, and how she could have completely gone off tracks with her life. I loved this book. The vulnerability, I felt connected. I felt all the feels for her. I just wanted to help her out. I wish that I was there at the time. And the serendipity in it, I mean, you just have to read it for yourself. I'm not going to spoil anything. Once again, I didn't rate this one, like apart from giving her a rating on Goodreads to like help her with her book. I just don't feel like I can rate her life, you know? Like this is her life and she's sharing it so openly. And I feel like a lot of people can't relate but can relate. Like the people that need to read this book will read this book. Basically just go out, check out the synopsis of her story, and if that's something you find interesting when you read it, then pick it up. And if you don't, then leave it. I'm so disappointed to be sharing this book. And I think we can all take a moment to just grieve what we've lost. And that is Carrie Soto is back. This is one of the most hyped books of 2022. The amount of times that I've seen booktubers say how great this is, like people that I wouldn't even expect to rate this 5 stars have rated this 5 stars. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've rated every book that she's written highly. This book is a 2 stars. And the reason I'm giving it 2 stars is because I feel like it was underdone. I don't feel like this character gets redemption. I don't think she's likable. I feel like she doesn't learn anything. There's no character development. She just doesn't change. I guess you could say she's unapologetic in authenticity of who she is, and that's a bitch. But to me, she's not inspiring because I feel like she didn't learn anything and she keeps treating herself and others the same way that she always has. And by the end of the story, I just feel like that you just read a whole bunch of tennis matches, which I was told this isn't a book 100% entirely about tennis, which it totally is. There's not a freaking line that doesn't talk about tennis. I get so frustrated when I think about this book. I literally just finished it, by the way, so it's still pretty raw and red in my mind. Please let me know in the comments if you felt the same or if you felt differently. I want to hear from someone who's read this and rated it 5 stars and give me just a reason to believe that this book is anything other than what I just described. So if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid and you're like me and everyone's like, oh, you didn't like her in Malibu Rising, you like her in this book, and just pick it up and forget that it's about tennis and just read it, don't. That's all I have to say. So there we have it, guys. Let's keep it short and sweet. They are the 8 books that I have read. In February, we had 4 physical books. We had 4 Kindle Unlimited books. And stick around for my next video because we'll be bringing you a book recommendations tag by Steph Boa. She is a highly anticipated booktuber and I'm so excited to be bringing this one to you. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. If you are interested in bookish content, then do stick around. Become a subscriber, become a bookish bestie. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.